there, everybody. Welcome to Design Build Central, a podcast for design build remodelers by design build remodelers. Kind of forgot what I was going to say there.
It's a little tricky, actually.
Yeah, you guys know, right?
Yes.
If you haven't been here before, you've been lucky. Anyway, I am Bill Millholland, and I'm here with my co-host, Bruce Case. We went
honored
full
to be
name
here.
this
That's
time.
right. Yes,
well
we did.
Well done. So the last time we spoke, we talked a little bit about what was involved in businesses that lasted for a long period.
At least
of time.
our business.
Generational. Right. And we talked through what we thought were the foundation components of that. But while we were doing that, we stumbled upon the idea of maybe talking about multiple offices. And so here we are.
Good idea.
Let's talk about that concept. And I guess the way I would frame the conversation, certainly welcome to input if you have a better idea, and that would be related to that longevity component that we talked about that involved growth or expansion, right? And that there are a couple of ways you might approach that. It might be hire more team members so that you can service more clients. It might be invest more in marketing and try and grow that base of opportunities. The other idea might be to say, hey, we've been successful here in our town. There's a town similar to it, not that far away. I wonder if it would be a good idea to put another location there and bring our business, expand the territory that we can service. We've been through that process.
A lot of
before.
iterations of it, yes.
And I was hoping maybe we could talk about a little bit of our evolution in thinking there, and then maybe even play out a couple different scenarios that might be possible. And I was hoping you could share, because you were leading the charge I guess that was smaller scale home improvement handyman stuff, where it was, we're going to grow that business by expanding territory. And with that came additional offices.
Right. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. At the time we're in the DC market, for those of you who don't know. So our headquarters is in Bethesda, Maryland. We had Falls Church going at the time, which, for those who aren't familiar with the market, without traffic, maybe 20-minute drive between those two. With traffic, it could be maybe an hour, 45 minutes, let's say 45 minutes.
Longer than it should be.
Yeah, amen. And so we had those two offices, is my memory at the time.
Yes.
And then, to your point, when we wanted to expand, we opened up in Chantilly, Virginia, which is more like an hour, 45 minutes west. Opened up in Annapolis, which is probably 45 minutes east.
Pretty similar.
Again, without traffic.
Yep.
Were our two that I remember.
Yes.
Eventually, later on, it's just a longer story, we opened up in Williamsburg, Virginia.
Right.
And some of that.
But that was well downstream.
That was well
of the
downstream.
Other two.
And the model, do you want me to dive into the little details or not?
But maybe, because I had just forgotten about Falls Church before that even happened. And we were chatting a little bit about that, trying to recall, because that's started in the 80s, which was before either of us was
They make cool
here.
radio stations that play old music like that, right? Like, that's how old it is.
It's an oldie. And that was... Again, you'd probably know more about this than I do, but there is, at least in this area, there is a physical barrier between states, and that is Maryland is on one side of the Potomac River and Virginia is on the other side of the river. And for whatever reason, it's just a bridge. It's really not hard to get across, but there is a divide there, not only physically or geographically, but mentally as well. And I think that was, we could not service. People in Virginia we were not going to be at the top of the list to call if our location was in Bethesda. And my recollection is that's kind of how Falls Church came to be.
I wasn't in the business then. I was growing up, but that's my recollection as well. And as we were talking earlier, at that time, so we got which frankly we still own, but we got sort of a Cape Cod style brick office, and we had put a seasoned person or a couple people down there and sort of tried to grow it over the years. But it took many years, and I'd be lying if I said exactly knew how many years, but for it to become a sort of thriving, profitable, ongoing concern, I would guess 10 years at least.
Yeah.
But is that?
Yeah. I think that's right. And, as I'm thinking back through all of this, the other thing we talked about was in the previous episode was tenure
Yes.
and like institutional knowledge. We lost that a couple of times in Falls Church. We saw like generations almost of people that was different than here.
And do you mean because they would go there and then not stay, or
in some, yeah. In some cases, that was that. In some cases, we'd have people from here go down, work there, and that just for whatever reason they weren't the right fit. Not that they were the wrong people. They came back to Bethesda, but it just didn't work. And we finally seem to have, to some degree, resolved that issue because it's been fairly stable for the last. But
it's interesting the way you said that, because you and I both know the reality is the culture and you and I agree on this, the culture in our Falls Church office that has been around since the mid 80s. So 40, 50 years is a little bit different. It's not entirely different. They still care about team, clients, quality.
The important stuff.
Exactly. But if you go down there, it's a little bit more of like a small boat mentality. It has a spiral staircase in the middle, and people will yell up and down, "Hey, what's going on with this?" And and here in our Bethesda office, where it's more corporate feeling, that kind of thing. It's just there's some differences. It's a
very different vibe.
Yeah. It's interesting, and I can't help but wonder if that was a challenge getting it going, because there needs to be a little different culture, maybe because Virginia isn't that different than Maryland, but there are some differences. But also, we all know that was starting up in a territory that didn't know Case that well at all. Our brand was not established. And so you're sort of being a frontiers person, and just like a frontiers person, you got to blaze those trails, and it takes a little different personality. I wonder if that relates to some of the turnover too, because the personality is a little different to do that than somebody who's more of an established.
No, good point. Because Bethesda had a 25 year head start.
Right.
And so the brand was known at a different level than in Falls Church. So you were going to talk a little bit or explain that evolution of, okay, so we did have two offices. So we were at least familiar with the concept, but now it was time to take 20 minutes and double that. So now it's 45 minutes, and it's a difference just in that alone. But then what was the structure of those offices?
Right. Great question. It was, as you know, it was a general manager structure. So just to define that a little bit, those locations were really focused on building our brand in a new territory around people. So it was about, okay, we're going to open an office, and it's an office. It's not a design studio or anything like that. And we're going to have a general manager that needs to be paid in a way that that person would head up production and sales. The accounting, IT, HR was all centralized in Bethesda, but the sort of operational front lines were all out of that office, headed up by that general manager. And same with Annapolis, was the same structure. And that created a couple of challenges in my looking back on it. And we'll talk more, I'm sure, about the iterations. But one challenge is that it put a lot of overhead in that office, because the general manager needed to be paid at a level that you could find somebody good to do all of that. Then you had a team of people all hired up to do that. And then, oh, by the way, a lot of those people were new, right? It wasn't like we took all our seasoned people and moved them to 45 minutes away. So you have new people, a lot of overhead. Then it became, we need to get this up at the time to 3 million in sales as quickly as possible to make it at least break even or make a buck. It wasn't to make big money, but to make something, not lose money. And then that put a lot of pressure on the sales side of the business, as opposed to as much pressure on the culture or long-term thought about building the team or gross profit or client experience or team. And I'm not saying we didn't think about those things, but it just put a lot of pressure on the sales, and same with Annapolis. And it also, I think, for the leadership team, pulled our focus just a little bit. I mean, we have a good thing here and in Falls Church at the time, and it sort of there's an opportunity cost to some time spent over there that could be worth it or could not.
Right.
And then 2008 hit, when the economy just, at least here and I think across the U.S., tanked for housing, and it quickly became evident that this was not a failure to me. Did you call it a foul ball on the last episode, which I think is a perfect way to say it. I think it wasn't a scoring hit. It didn't get us on base.
But we made contact.
And we learned.
Yep.
I think we learned a lot
I do
of
too.
some things not to do, but also some of the benefits.
Right. The other thing is so they were almost like independent little businesses that were supported with some of the functions that you just outlined. And I remember as a result of that pressure on sales and getting to that $3 million mark, that also put pressure on marketing.
Yes.
And then I remember the discussions was like, well, wait a minute, we're allocating marketing this way instead of that way. Shouldn't we allocate based on number of leads or number of people or something like that instead of dollar volume? And it just, again, it wasn't crummy, but it was like a distraction.
Yes.
That maybe took our eyes off what we should have been doing for just, a second or two.
Right.
But sometimes those seconds are important.
Yeah. In hindsight, and again, we changed our model a little bit, which we'll get into, but some things that if I was going to do it again, that level with a general manager, first of all, I'd try to avoid that much staff overhead, which we'll talk about. But if I was going to do it, I'd say to myself, you know what? Be ready to lose money for the first, 3 years. I'm just
maybe 5.
Maybe 5. You better pick a good market that relates to that can sustain. Just because we can sell $200,000 average kitchens or 150,000 kitchens in our market here an hour away, if home values are half of what they are in the urban center, can you still do that? Or is it an entirely different client base, a different price point? In our case, yes. So that I think more recognition of that in hindsight. Something we did well, though, I don't know how you feel. I think we did well was the allocations, which I know there was some bickering about them.
Yes.
But I think it was really important for us that we did separate that out on the income statement. So it's like, okay, we understand that this location is losing money.
Yep.
And we're good with that or not, but let's be clear about it.
But it was obvious.
Exactly.
And tracked, and we could have discussions about it. But you knew,
right?
So as opposed to lumping it all together,
which would be tempting because it's easier just to lump.
Yeah, but then you don't know
exactly. So for people listening, if you're considering, or even if you have one now and do lump it all together, I'd really suggest. And we did allocations based on like health insurance was on head count. Rent was obvious because it was rent for the Chantilly office. Marketing, I think, was on sales.
Can't even remember.
So we tried to use
logic. But there was real thought behind it.
Yes.
And it varied per line item, sort of thing.
Right, exactly.
So, as you were saying that, though, we are design build remodelers for design build remodelers on the podcast. That was not a specialty, but it was probably a little more towards the specialty side of the spectrum in terms of remodeling than design build.
True.
And I think our thinking has evolved quite a bit in that way when it comes to multiple offices, maybe that we can talk a little bit. But do you think a specialty firm would need general management in a separate location in a way that, and maybe we'll talk about what a separate office means to us and how that's managed, in a way that a design build firm
I don't think so. That's my opinion. We're not specialty, but my opinion is in specialty, you'd have a head of sales and a head of production. I don't know what they call it, especially install, the windows or whatever they're selling, that could then manage the different areas, and then with a certain region within 45 minutes. Yes, if the satellite office is 3 hours away, I think then
that's too much.
It's more a general manager. And I'm guessing here, Bill, but I would guess that if I was a specialty firm, I wouldn't look at 3 hours away and we're just gonna have one location and one. I'd say, you know what, this is a region we can build out. We're gonna have 6 locations over the next 10 years. We're gonna have a general manager build it out. And
if you're gonna make that commitment
to me, 3 hours away,
because then you could span it across 3, 4, 5 different offices instead of 3, 4, 5 more general managers. Yeah. And so like you said, okay, 2008 comes along, we rethink how the business is structured, but at some point it's time to, and I guess the first step we took was DC, right? That was next up. So we sort of consolidated, changed the structure. We were a lot more divisional back in the day, where design build was more additions, wherein there was a kitchen and bath and a remodeling sort of component. And a lot of that is now jumbled together. And it's more divided on services provided to the client than scope of work, maybe, if that makes any sense. So at least for us, anything that requires a designer or a permit falls on the case side of things. Anything that doesn't falls on the Fred side of things. Now, and that doesn't necessarily equate to dollar amount. So, some of the Fred guys sell a lot of projects and for significant amounts of money. $50,000, $100,000, $150,000, but those are projects that are home improvement related as opposed to design related projects. So it's not a dollar volume thing. So that's kind of how things evolved to be. And then again, we talked a little bit about that physical geographic barrier of the Potomac River between Maryland and DC. It's not as strong in the district, but I think people in DC appreciate working with people in DC.
Yeah, it's two thoughts come to mind when you say it. One is we do here at Case, we've done traditionally, once a year go off for strategic planning. And for a couple of years, I don't know if you remember this, Bill, but my dad would say, we should think about Starbucks types locations. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest, I'd say this if he was sitting in front of me, I'd look at him like, that's a little strange. Like, I don't even understand, like, little Starbucks location. He didn't mean literally coffee. I think he meant the small footprint sort of. It took me years to sort of catch up a little bit to that. I think, what he meant is, again, smaller footprint.
Yep.
And then tying into that, for me, what helped me think about it, and I don't know about you, Bill, when you were thinking about it, was also, I think most of us would agree remodeling is very local.
Yes.
And so why isn't remodeling hyper-local? In other words, we're in the Metro DC. Is it good enough to, if you want to grow and expand, if that's your interest, is it enough to have one location and say that you're local, or is it better to be hyper-local? So when you're in urban DC and you have a client at the time, we didn't have a lot with design centers either, design studios
that
for selections.
That was all evolving at that time.
At the same time. So it was like, okay, if I live in urban downtown DC by the Capitol, if you don't know the area or by those areas, if I have to drive to Rockville, which is to Ferguson to look at things, and this is no reflection on Ferguson, it's just locations of selections, it's like going to Iowa from DC for those people.
It's an hour and a half of painful inch at a time.
Yeah. And so
traffic.
Why not be hyper local? And then you get into things like Google search, like Remodeler near me. We were at a conference and they said one of the biggest at the time searches in Google was near me. And again, it was more restaurants, but it was like, so all those kind of things in my head at least came together.
So DC and when we started thinking and even looking, we were thinking almost storefront like,
right.
First floor, lots of glass, walk-in traffic, and after some consideration, and actually I think some talking to other firms, maybe kitchen showrooms or even realtors, like probably not going to see much walk-in traffic off the street to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. So maybe that first floor location, which you pay a premium for, isn't the best use of whatever resources we were willing to devote to this. And so our DC office is actually on the second floor of a 2-story building.
Three stories.
It is 3 stories. It does have 3 stories. So you cannot see into it from the street level. It is on a significant street in DC in an area that is kind of the home area in terms of shopping for furniture, or even there was an Ann Sachs tile place nearby, and just that kind of stuff that it's in the right location, but it is not on the ground floor there. Parking is not, we don't have a parking lot. There's street parking. So it is definitely part of the urban core of DC as opposed to the suburban core of DC. And then we do not have a general manager in the DC office as well.
Yeah, we were talking about it before we got online on the air. And really it was a focus on the DC expansion was really a focus on the space and on the design studio, not on the people. And let me explain that, because it sounds like we don't care about people. It's not that. it was before, as I said earlier, our expansions were more about the people. We needed to build a team. It was an office space. This is more of a design studio space, as you know, with some offices in it. We were able to take some existing team members that were experienced and had the culture and had showed that they're fantastic performers, and have them sit down there, use the design studio, and then, oh, by the way, other team members who might sit in other offices like in Bethesda or Falls Church could also leverage that design studio. And then one other tidbit, which kind of is a little bit different, but just I want to get in here, is that we also spend a lot of time looking at where we sell our jobs, on a map, dot sort of plan on a map, but also volume and revenue. And I'm trying to, I don't have it in front of me, but I think we probably sold about $1 million and a half a year in that urban DC zip codes. Not DC writ large, but those specific areas around that office. And our what we looked at as a management team with you, Bill, too, was can we get that up to 2-3 million a year with this location? Was kind of the mission and the goal. So I thought that was an important part of the process too.
And DC became for many years, if not number one market, certainly number two. It's been one of our strongest markets for 5, 6, 7 years.
Right.
Down a little bit now, but it'll be back. And we've got a great presence there, and people know us in a different way than they did before we had that presence there. Maybe we ought to pause for a second and talk a little bit about studio space, that idea, because that was critical to the thinking of this, and that we've always had a little bit of something, but a little bit of something is the right words, that it was much more, our offices were offices and had a conference room and a couple of samples around, and that was about
closet
it.
somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that as design became more important, as remodeling just in general became more accepted. I mean, I don't remember people doing the stuff they do now 25, 30 years ago.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just different.
Yeah.
And then the number of products available just totally changed. So did our thinking, and we've devoted a little more space to studio space. And I'm always hesitant to say showroom, because it is not a showroom. There are some small vignettes, which I hate because it's fashion and it goes out of style and they need to be refreshed. So the people out there with big showrooms and full kitchen, I just can't imagine. They look great for a year,
lot to keep up with,
year and a half. And that was critical to this thinking in DC, which is what you mentioned, that if you're in that urban core and have to go to a bunch of different places, it's a miserable experience, where if we could make that easy and convenient, it was a differentiator for us at the time.
And I thought, I'm stealing your words here, but the idea to be able to lay out for a client the whole suit with the tie, with the shoes, with the socks, with the, in our world, as you know, you would have to go to 6 different places to pick things for a kitchen potentially. And that's not a great client experience, also not a great team experience as well. So the opportunity to do that in our design studios, like you said, Bill, as opposed to having huge vignettes of 4 kitchens, how can we get that sort of selection process for that suit, tie, all that in a curated way?
Yep. So our studios are more sample heavy than vignette heavy. So we've got, 100 different cabinet door styles and different finishes and all the rest of that. We've got 10 billion different pieces of tile. We can never have enough.
And it's heavy.
So a bunch of tile, countertops, all that sort of stuff. So to your point, we can lay that all out and just imagine that experience of a client walking in, a 16-foot long island divided into 3 different outfits that are all curated and professionally designed and developed. It just makes you feel like, this is for me. This is fantastic. This feels like a higher level of service. I understand why it might cost a nickel more because I get this for it. All of those sorts of things. And then that was really... Bethesda's always had a little more, but that was really, I think, the first full scale.
And I'd forgotten, you sort of touched on it. I think, is this your memory? I think we did that in DC because of what you're referencing. It was such a distance at that time to go to different,
how on earth would
Yeah.
The project developers, designers would spend all their time.
Right.
And we have gotten really good at this. And that I would imagine 95% of our selections are made in our studios as opposed to going out to various showrooms. Sometimes we do. Some clients want to sit in a tub somewhere as opposed to look on it online and look at a sample chip or something like that.
I also give a shout out to Kohler specifically on this because at the time, Kohler stores were starting, I don't remember the exact timing, but were coming about, saw some of them, and it was clear that it was about the emotional, to me at least. A big takeaway was when you walk in, what's your emotion? Okay, they've got this. This is almost like a museum, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not trying to compare ours to Kohler stores because Kohler stores are pretty impressive.
Beautiful, yeah.
But that concept, when you, like you mentioned, a lot of samples, but for listeners, a lot of those samples are behind doors or are sort of hidden away in a sense and then brought out to curate for that client. But when you walk in, our goal is that you have a feel like, okay, that this is my level of finish and fit and design.
I know I'm going to get good advice. I know they have things I'll be interested in. I don't need to go anywhere else. You guys have me covered. So then DC did well.
Yep.
We saw a difference in business. It was not a problem having no general manager there. There's enough interaction. There's technologies nowadays where we can meet regularly with people that work out of that office. And then it became, I guess, next up would be Falls Church, right?
Yeah, and Falls Church, and that was interesting because, like you said, for us at least, DC was our first design studio. We had it has some offices too, so I'm guessing it might be 3,500 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, 3,000 square feet. So it's not huge, but gets that point across. Falls Church might be 2,000, 2,500 square feet design studio.
Yep.
So we already have an office in Falls Church, just to kind of step back for a minute, like we've talked about. But separately, we opened up a design studio because we saw the success, as you say, in DC. And so it's smaller because we already have an office. Unfortunately, there may be a 5-minute drive apart, which doesn't sound like a lot, but is not ideal. But we just couldn't work it out. But some differences on the Falls Church one. One is the size. Number two is we don't have anybody literally working out of it. Number three is we were focused on, we knew we wouldn't get walk-ins. We might get 1 or 2 a year, but not really. But we did feel like, is there a way to make it sort of a billboard? So get some extra marketing muscle out of that. So we do have it on a very busy street with awnings, with the logos that we light up at night.
On the first floor with a lot of glass so you can see into it.
Right.
So it functions as a billboard as well, even though it's not staffed all the time. But that's the big difference, is that it is a place where you meet clients, you make selections, you land there between appointments, whatever it might be.
Right.
But nobody goes there day to day and works out of that office, because we had the office in Falls Church and we were just, you'd have a client come in. It's a little house, and they'd come in and they'd sit in a conference room in a little house, and we could only have so much stuff there because there just wasn't any room. So that was sort of phase 2 of that, and has proven to be successful.
Yep.
And we're able again to make most of the selections there. So it's a convenience factor for clients. It goes beyond just expanding the business.
Was that the first location with a wow wall? Which I know we're going to have to explain what a wow wall is in a second.
I think DC is the first wow wall. Yeah.
Because that's cool.
So
that was your idea.
So we run into situations where a client is making a selection for cabinetry, and the cabinetry is painted white, and it's the exact door style they want, but it is oak. They cannot see that cabinet could be painted white. They can't see it. So we made the decision to order 30 different door styles and mount them all that were white. All of them were the same color. And we tried to make the process more of a, let's pick a door style and then let's focus on a wood species, a finish, or whatever that might be. Again, to help a client get through that barrier of, no, I need to see that exact door in that exact wood species, in that exact finish. And we'll go that route if we need to, and we get to that point. But it was really in an effort to help clients make decisions along with the rest of the studio space. Is just, if, imagine if you're carting a door style sample with a piece of granite or quartz, and then you're going to look at tile for the backsplashes. You're not going to make the same level of a decision you would if you got to lay that all out and experience that all at one time. So so DC, Falls Church, and now we've got Old Town, Alexandria.
Right. And again, as you know, so our headquarters is Bethesda. DC's without traffic, maybe 20 minutes one direction. Falls Church, 20 minutes another direction across the river you've mentioned. Yep. Alexandria might be more 30 minutes from like the Falls Church office, again, without traffic. But it's its own... It's not that far, but as you know, it's sort of culturally its own enclave a little bit.
Yep.
And it's a similar dynamic where we already had some business there. How do we grow that business? How do we serve those clients better? And created a design studio. Now that one's a little more the model of DC, as you know, with design studio, but also some office space as well. The other thing I'd say, it's been frankly kind of fun for me, at least, as we look at these spaces, to find spaces, back to that Kohler reference, that when you walk in that are interesting spaces. In Bethesda, we're talking to you from our offices in Bethesda with drop ceilings, 8-foot ceiling. It's an office building. So we're sort of limited our design studio here that we're trying to work on actually as we speak. But some of these other locations, I think personally, are kind of in some interesting
spaces.
Alexandria is an old bank. So we have an old vault with a huge door on it that we had to negotiate with the landlord. Like the vault cannot lock anymore. So we had to work that out. By the way, and then we had to get air conditioning and fire suppression into the vault, which is a whole nother story. But that's a similar dynamic, as you know, Bill, where it's focused on design studio. It's focused on hyper local. It's not, we didn't hire more people to work out of it. And as we grow, sure, we're hiring more people, but it's more organically. It's hire the people when we see the business, not hire and push to get to $3 million in revenue quick.
Right. And so through this timeline, head in a direction, focus more on people.
Right.
Pull that back. Focus a little more on the design studio component of it, making it convenient for clients, making it so we can make selections there and not have that drag into production, which is even worse of an experience for that client. And with that model, we can either sort of bolt on some office space to that or not, depending on situation, distance from other offices, all those things might come into play. And then again, we've spread staff to those designers, not project managers so much. That's all typically out of an office, but designers and project developers to those offices. But we have not spread management.
Right.
It's all managed out of either Falls Church or Bethesda.
Right.
And I think we're counting on that to remain the situation if there are future, satellite offices.
I wonder how far what's your sense? Like, if I'm listening and like I'm thinking about an hour away, is that?
I think an hour is probably doable, but much further than that starts to get challenging.
Yeah.
Because you can't just get there and get out and still have some of your day. That's going to be a day-long effort. And maybe that's fine for you, but I think you better go into that thinking it if you're going to bounce around to different offices, or if you're going to have people in it. But even if you don't have people, an hour to drive to meet a client, to drive back an hour to where your sort of main station is, that's a pretty big commitment of time.
And I know I did some rationalization, and when we opened up in a location about 2 hours away, that I can do 2 hours away each way. That's a day, and a little bit of a long day, but I can make it. But what happened, at least with me, and I'm fairly disciplined, and maybe others will be more disciplined, but after the weeks and months go by, and after 6 months of that, it gets hard. Plus, you're showing up for a day.
Yeah.
And someone once told me the story of managing by bird or something, bird management, or they called it something like that. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's when you fly in, you poop on everybody, and you fly back out. And I'd like to think I didn't do that, but the reality is there were probably, right? I mean, you're there for a day, you see some stuff,
right.
and then you
Stir
drive
it up
away.
and then you're gone.
Yeah, and so it does make it hard. So to me, I don't know how you feel, but to me, if somebody's listening thinking, I'm in DC and I want to open up in Florida, or I want to open up more than a 2-3 hour drive, or I think really be careful with that, number one. Number two is I think you probably need a general manager, which then probably means be ready to invest or quote unquote lose some money for the first 3 to 5 years. And it better be a good market that can grow to 3 to 5 million. Like if it's not urban enough or it can't sustain that much business, it's going to be hard. But what's your take of all that?
I think that's all great advice. Yeah, that there is a certain distance at which you're kind of stuck with having to add some infrastructure to that office, or you're just not going to be able to take care of it in the way it's going to need to be nurtured as it's coming out of the ground.
Right.
So, so hopefully that gives you a couple of things to think about.
Yeah, we've learned a lot.
As you go on this journey, if you're thinking as a design build remodeler, because it may be different if you're in more of a specialty situation, think through what the magnet is for it. First off, ours is design studios, right? That's the reason to go to the office. Then the staffing of it, the people, do you need office space there? Can people just land there, meet with clients and get out? And then how far away that might be. And that at a certain distance, we've come up with about an hour of drive time each way, that beyond that, you probably have to think about more infrastructure in that, you've got to have a general manager or something like that.
Right, agreed. And separate the numbers too. I think we talked about that. Like on your financials, like have a separate budget allocation.
No, great.
Be honest about it.
Great. Definitely helped us see things that it would have taken years to see if it weren't done that way.
Right.
It just would not have worked out. So anyway, hope that was helpful. Thank you for watching. Tune in to the next episode soon. See you then.
See
Bye.
ya.